So I first want to thank off by starting by thanking Rich and Daniel for really helping to pull the synthetic biology track together. They did an incredible amount of work planning. Daniel put together a gigantic background memo. And we really couldn't have had these conversations without them. So I think round of applause for them. I've had the privilege of actually following the synthetic biology issue since the first Tarrytown a couple years ago. And Tarrytown 1, we had one small session on synthetic biology. And then Tarrytown 2, we had 2 sessions on synthetic biology. So I think it was only fitting that Tarrytown 3, we actually had 3 sessions on synthetic biology. We called it a track, and I think it actually worked really well. And the first 1 and 2 Tarrytown bits on synthetic biology were largely discussions of what are our concerns, where do we see risks, what do we want to see happen, but somewhat academic, largely just teaching ourselves, getting on the same page. And really, for Tarrytown 3, we wanted to take this and actually come up with some next steps, some outcomes and campaign plans to make sure that when the Tarrytown sessions come to a close after this afternoon, we actually have something that we can build with moving forward and then hopefully take to Tarrytown 3.5 and 3.6 or whatever's going to come next. And so I'm going to focus on what those outcomes and campaign ideas were and not be too academic, since that's what we tried to move away from in our track to begin with. And I want to point out this past year we published the Principles for the Oversight of Synthetic Biology, which a number of you have already endorsed. It's been endorsed by almost 120 organizations from around the world. And it really has become a pretty main document, I would say, in framing synthetic biology from the civil society side of things. And I bring this up for shameless self-promotion, but also because this document helped to frame some of our discussions. We talked a lot about what are some of the lines that we would not want to cross with synthetic biology. You know, some applications we might find to be beneficial, but there are some lines that we don't think we as a society should ever cross. And one of them in the principles document was using synthetic biology or other biotechnologies to re-engineer the human germline and human genome, epigenome, microbiome. And so that was really the focus of our discussion of, if we want to see that become a reality, an actual ban on trying to manipulate the human genome, et cetera, what do we need to do? And so these are what we come up with are a couple steps to at least start that conversation, to build up our knowledge and capacity to work on those issues. And so the first thing that we're going to do is put together a white paper on human applications of synthetic biology. We know that there's a lot going on in this realm, whether it's re-engineering vaccines through synthetic biology, trying to create organisms that can attack cancer cells, turning stem cells into embryos and using synbio to actually create some manipulations in the genome that way. And so we know that there's a lot going on, some that is more near term, some that might be further out, and some that might just be hype and might not be realistic scientifically, but try to get a sense of what's out there, what we actually are concerned about, and then some concrete policy options to look at moving forward. Concurrent to that would be what Stuart Newman proposed, and Friends of the Earth, the Center for Genetics and Society, and the International Center for Technology Assessment are going to take the lead on the white paper with help of a bunch of others. And then the second bit is was proposed by Stuart Newman, which is really what he called the Frank Report for human genetics. And to those that don't know, the Frank Report was before the bombs were dropped in Japan. A bunch of scientists that work for the Manhattan Project actually wrote a paper arguing against dropping nuclear weapons in the world. And this was when it became unclassified, it was a big turning point in the debate around that specific technology. And so the idea here is to actually reach out to some major scientists in the synthetic biology world, molecular biology, evolutionary biology, that agree with our stance that we should not actually re-engineer the human genome, and to try to actually use that to shift the debate and make sure that the technologies don't go in that direction to begin with. And so I think we should call it the Stuart-Newman Report, but Stuart gets mad when I say that. J.D. Hansen said we should call it the New Human Report instead of Newman, New Human. So we're not going to call it that for sure, but we're going to come up with something clever. The third outcome was really pushed by Bob and Susan in looking at the use of synthetic biology to create bioweapons. And the new challenges that synthetic biology poses when we're talking about bioweapons, and the Bioweapons Convention, and what we need to do about that. So they're going to help us move forward and think through some of those issues a bit more. The fourth was going a bit deeper into some of the bioethics or the biopolitical issues around synthetic biology. What are our actual core concerns and why do we care? Is it the synthetic biology is pushing us further away from the natural into the artificial, or is it more the social justice arguments? Is it both? Just trying to come up with a stronger, more concrete ethical biopolitical argument, and Daniel and Bruce are going to help us think through that moving forward. And then part of all of that is going to be an effort that Gina is really going to help take the lead on, which is an overarching media strategy and making sure that we can communicate these issues well and smartly, reaching out to journalists, building new relationships with journalists, and making sure that our critique and these campaign steps and tactics and options actually are being heard by the right audiences and are reaching a broader audience. And we're really keen to make sure that the media strategy is tied into all of those other pieces that we discussed. So that is it, and I'll leave my 10 seconds left to Rich. So thank you all.